Thought leadership can be a powerful tool for business as a fundamental part of content marketing. It's about joining the conversation, being authentic, and letting your audience get to know you. But how and when can it be used most effectively? Trevor Meriden is an expert in B2B thought leadership and content strategy. As the founder of Maryborn Media, he helps businesses express themselves through the long-form content of thought leadership papers. And we are so glad that you're here today to share your thoughts with us, Trevor. Thank you.
It's fantastic to be here.
This term has been around a long time, but it's recently back in the buzzword realm. What is thought leadership? Why is it so important to entrepreneurs, especially those in B2B?
Well, you're right. It has been around a long time. In my research, or suggested it's been around since the 19th century. I mean, a lot of thought leaders were being sort of referred to as such for having enlightened views. And the earliest reference I found to it was around attitudes towards the abolition of slavery, for example, sort of in the 19th century. Then you fast forward, and it's kind of comes in and out of fashion, but it kind of really took off in the 1950s when there was a guy called Joel Kurtzman who ran a magazine called Strategy and Business, and he popularized the term by actually talking about thought leaders having deep insights. And then it all sort of took off and mushroomed, and then suddenly everybody wanted to be a thought leader. And that was part of the seeds of the original problem, was that everybody came forward and said, yes, I'm a thought leader as well. And of course, the term became a little bit cliched. And what I would say sort of fell a little bit into disrepair, became a bit of an annoying term in some ways. And but now what's happened is I think you're seeing a sort of renaissance of thought leadership. I've been doing some research, sort of looking at into a paper myself, sort of around 2021, really about the renaissance of thought leadership, and really just talking about how it is changing its form, how it's evolving, and it's going to have to, which comes to the second part of your question about why it's so important, particularly for B2B. Well, a lot of B2B buyers, are sort of adopting new ways of buying, and partly brought on by the pandemic. About 4 out of 5 of them, according to some research, don't want to go back to the old ways of buying things. A number of sellers, roughly the same number of proportion of sellers, is saying more or less the same thing, that actually they're finding there are new and effective ways of selling remotely. Everybody says nothing beats face-to-face, and that's probably still true. But nevertheless, there are different and unexpected benefits. And nobody really thinks that we're going to go completely back to how we were before. So what does that mean for thought leadership? It means that really what's happening is that we're kind of reaching a situation where you need to find new ways, a sort of more connected way of reaching a customer. And to have long form sort of thought leadership where you're actually thinking through an issue and placing you and your business sort of at the center of the debate is actually becoming an effective way. So you're seeing this kind of renaissance or rebirth of thought leadership along the way.
Well, you made a number of excellent points, but one in particular, it's important to note that if you want to be successful, there's a difference between thought leader and thought follower.
Absolutely. And I think a lot of people who are sort of Me Too thought leaders, if you like, sort of in the sense of they were saying, oh, yes, I feel as though I need to have something to say because my rival or competitor is saying something. Well, I think those sorts of thought leaders are perhaps not going to prosper in this new world. The thought leader of today and tomorrow, possibly accelerated by the pandemic, are those who are going to place themselves at the center of the debate, not necessarily those who have all the answers even, but nevertheless say, look, I've had this thought, I don't know all the answers myself, but come with me on the journey and let's explore it.
Well, as you say, 2020's put businesses into reaction mode. How useful is thought leadership as a business strategy during uncertain times? And how are businesses responding to this trend?
Well, it's a big question. The 2020, on the one level, if you talk about the old concept of thought leadership, where, you have this image of a guru sitting there stroking their chin, sort of thinking, and then suddenly a big light bulb appears and, the world is a better place as a result, then, forget that form of thought leadership, because the world's problems are so knotty and complex these days that the businesses really sort of need to be sort of collaborating a lot more. So in terms of how they use it, they need to be talking within their business, unlocking those pockets of expertise that they didn't have before. It's a difficult job being a thought leader under that old definition. But if you move it from a sort of me concept to a we concept of how we as a business can develop ideas, then I think that's how the best way that businesses can use it this year and next.
Well, we're seeing situations during the pandemic where people have professed expertise, taken a stand, and then later had to walk back their statements. Have perspectives on experts and thought leaders changed as a result?
Well, I think experts sometimes take a bit of a bashing at the moment, particularly in 2020 when so much unexpected has happened. And I think the problem is that because of the complexity, the sheer multi-layered nature of problems, I think somebody who says I have all the answers sort of probably deserves our immediate cynicism in some ways. That actually they can't have all the answers because none of us have all the answers. Only some people have even a few of the answers. But collectively, the collective sort of nature of thought leadership that I'm talking about, and in the research that I've been doing, is suggests that together we are much stronger. And I think there's a certain humility around thought leadership that we have to have. That actually we're saying that if you're looking to me for all the answers, you'll be waiting for a long time, because actually, but you and me and that person over there, sort of together, we can actually sort of think these issues through.
And it's an interesting change that the nature is changing from a me to we mentality with a greater focus on collaboration within communities of common interest. Do you think that's a strategy that will last? Is it difficult for business leaders to share the spotlight?
Yes, I think it's interesting for a lot of business leaders, but also I think it's easier than it would have been 5 years ago. In 5 years ago, the leaders that you or I might have been talking about were very much the sort of leading from the front, the sort of Henry V sword in hand kind of leaders sort of into the battlefield. Those sorts of leaders are actually starting to become a bit of a dying breed. I think those leaders will find it tough to share the spotlight. But luckily, you see that there's a whole new type of, or several types of thought leadership that's emerging. If you look at technology companies, their sort of predisposition a lot of the time is to actually collaborate in search of an answer. And that's the part of their DNA since they were these relatively young companies since they were born. If you look at older industries like retail, they are starting to collaborate around their thoughts about their industry because they're facing an existential crisis. It's been a tough old year for retail. And if you're looking for any businesses looking outside and how are we going to survive, it's all about sharing your thought leadership and not necessarily having all the answers with your customer. And and the only way you can do that is to get to know your customer even better than perhaps you already did. You need to know who they are, what they're selling, how you're going to actually sell it to them when they want it, all of those key questions, and you're going to have to know it, and you're going to have to be a lot better. So in all those respects, thought leadership sort of gives you clarity and sort of helps you in terms of how you're going to create new sales, keep customers, and raise your visibility in a very, very tough marketplace.
Well, we're kind of, as you're mentioning, at a turning point when it comes to thought leadership and the nature of thought leadership. You mentioned you were writing a paper. Are there any things in there that are surprising you within your research?
Well, I'm very encouraged by my research. Many years ago, as an example of this, that I came across a CEO who was a kind of a very humble CEO, and he was one of those CEOs who was just very much in terms of enabling and wanting to be out of the spotlight and give the spotlight to others to show their thought leadership in his organization. And what I'm finding in my interviews is actually those types of thought leaders or leaders in business are becoming much more commonplace. I thought we would still find some of the old thought leadership dinosaurs who said, listen to me and only me. And the big encouraging thing is that because we're at this inflection point when we're talking about 2021, I'm really encouraged to see that people are moving forward, but actually saying, look, we're reaching this turning point in the pandemic or in the economic crisis, and we're all going to need to work together. And I'm very heartened by the fact that is actually seems to be almost the default position around thought leadership at the moment.
Well, you've certainly given us lots to think about thought leadership. Trevor, thank you so much for taking some time for NewsPoint 360 today.
Pleasure.